But we're also joined by Dr. Thulani Ngwenya, and he deals a lot with sports science. He is the head of medical at the South African Football Association, but he also has, I don't know what to call it, an initiative that you guys have that deals with sports science. Firstly, let me welcome you. What do you think? You've worked with Lucas Titole before, I understand.
Yes, indeed, I've worked with him. This is actually an ongoing thing that really needs education. We have had a lot of athletes. Somewhat, we do give them education, but at some point they decide to do otherwise, because the focus has been on sports enhancing drugs, but I mean performance enhancing drugs. However, doping is not only about that. In the case of Lucas, Lucas was not available when you are supposed to be actually tested. But it's not also about that. Some athletes will carry some substances that are banned, and that also is a violation of the WADA and SAID's rules. And you can also take a drug. Perhaps, let's say you go to a GP and you test, and then they find that you've got hypertension, for instance, and then you take a Lasix. Lasix is furosemide. It's a water tablet in layman's terms. But when you are an elite athlete and taking such a drug, you can actually test positive, because that drug is also used to mask drugs that are actually banned.
That's the point I want. Sometimes you go over the counter, you get something, Khalid. Do athletes have that sort of education? Because I don't think anyone would just go and say, I want methyl testosterone. I don't think, even some of these names we struggle to pronounce. Do we know what is in what? Do we know that?
Well, let's first separate medications, as the doctor mentioned, medications from sports supplements. And sports supplements is actually where the problem lies more than with medications. With medications, like Dr. Ngwenya will prescribe, those are controlled by the Medicines Control Act. It's very easy to look up. If you go to our website, you type in the medicine, and it will come up red or green. Red means it's banned, green means you can take it. So that's fairly simple. Where it's a registered medicine that a doctor is going to prescribe, or that you will get from a pharmacist. So all elite athletes, all athletes know about that, and especially doctors who work in sports are very familiar with these types of websites and apps where they can punch in those numbers. It gets more complicated with the sports supplements, and that's where many athletes have either unintentionally tested positive for banned substances, or intentionally. When it's quite clear that the substance contains banned substances, let's say like Kesto Boost. But there's also been some innocuous-looking supplements that have had anabolic steroids in. And it's a case-by-case basis, and when an athlete tests positive, they have to prove that they did not have the intention to cheat, and that they also did the due diligence and research to determine whether the supplement was banned or permitted. We advise athletes to treat sports supplements with high caution, because there is a high risk of contamination, since supplements operate in an unregulated
Khalid, sorry, before you continue, you make the point about having to prove beyond reasonable doubt that you were not intending to cheat. And we don't know. You tell us. For instance, the case of Maria Sharapova, when she was banned a couple of years ago, she swore that I just took something and I had no idea that this banned substance was in there. How do I now prove I'm just Benjamin trying to play and I took something? How do I prove to you that I did not intend to cheat and avoid the ban?
It's actually not reasonable doubt. It's on the balance of probabilities, which is a much lower threshold. So you have to prove and show the intention to cheat. It will be in cases where you bought it, the type of wrapper, why you bought the supplement, and whether the ingredients were listed on the supplement product. the threshold to prove and to demonstrate
Yeah.
the intention wasn't to cheat or to dope or to take banned substance is much lower, and it's referred to as on the balance of probability. Reasonable doubt is in criminal cases, not in
Doctor, let me come to you. So when you, let's say at HPC, for instance, athletes, a lot of wonderful athletes here in South Africa go to the HPC for fitness levels. Is there a way that you can see in the performance of an athlete that the I don't know, the way they are, the way physically they can perform is not at a usual position that you used to them being at?
Well,
Can you detect it at first sight?
well, if you have, it goes two ways. The first way is that if you have worked with that athlete and you have monitored them over years, and if there's some sudden change, then you should actually start worrying and really go further by asking further questions. What is it that is actually happening? But on first glance, it's the first time you see the patient, the athlete, and you can't really detect that there's actually something wrong. However, in some performances, when an athlete performs way beyond what is really expected, then you also start really having question marks. Yeah.
Okay, so you are Dr. Thulani Ngwenya. Bafana is playing. You are on the bench, and one player just happens to have this unbelievable game. Is that one of the things that is looked at to say, you can't just have this sort of man of the match performance? What do you do? And if finding you as the immediate person there, what do you do to take it to the higher authorities?
Well, firstly, what we do in case of Bafana, we screen. We've got the medical history of our athletes, and in each and every camp, we always on first day teach them about doping. We always have a talk about. We don't take it for granted. In each camp, without fail. In each camp, when they come to the medical room, we give them a talk about doping. But now, what goes then beyond that is that when the athlete performs his performance too good, we'd appreciate that. However, we need to then monitor and make sure that this athlete is really not taking any performance enhancing drugs.
Yeah. So what about those teams? Let's take it to football specifically, Khalid. Those teams that maybe are not financially sound, let me put it like that. Is there a compliance manual somewhere that every federation or every association has to have, that you have to have a doctor who can do this, who can perform this and that? And what happens if that particular club cannot afford those facilities?
Well, there's certain safety aspects, and that is governed not by us, but by FIFA, with respect to player management and team management and club management, and having medical personnel and safety or first responders at the field or with the team. Those are all FIFA regulations. I do want to just mention, we're talking about football and its relation to doping. We shouldn't assume if a player has a standout performance that they're on something. I would like us to differentiate. Football is a highly skilled sport. And as you will see on our statistics, especially in South Africa, very few footballers test positive for banned substances compared to sports like rugby, athletics, or other sports. So, if a player scores 4 goals, let's not assume that they on substances or doping. Sports that are highly skilled in terms of where a special technique, football, archery, where fine skills are required, those are incidences of doping. The risk for doping is much lower because steroids or other drugs are not really going to significantly enhance your performance.
Are random tests just that, random?
We never do random tests. That's like playing the lottery. We do test athletes, but there are various variables that we do. We don't just decide just to test specific athletes like playing the lottery. We may not specify a specific player. If we don't, then the team or the event we're testing, and the player happens to be on the team. So we very rarely, or we don't really do random testing because it's just a matter of rolling the dice and based on luck.
Well, you'd remember that Thulani Ngwenya was banned for 4 years after a random test was conducted. The guy was just coming off the field and they were like, hey, boy, come here. Test was done and he got a 4-year ban, and he still hasn't found a team, well, despite being allowed back into the game. Dr. Ngwenya, have you had many of these cases, especially in the world of football? Because we see them, we've seen a couple in rugby, 1 or 2 there in football, and a lot in athletics, even in Kenya. The name just escapes me now. One of the more prominent marathon runners in Kenya was just the other day banned.
Yeah.
Do we find it prominent in South Africa, the issue of doping?
SAIDS has worked so well to really try and show awareness and talk about awareness of doping. In football specifically, there are cases, but there's not too many because of the initiative that has been taken by SAIDS. Actually, I want us maybe to change focus. Those who are in high authorities like Khalid maybe can also talk to the other CEOs. I think the awareness needs to start at development level because right now, most of our focus is on the elite athletes.
The pros, once you turn pro.
Yes, once you turn pro, then focus is there. But if you've got proper education and you understand that this does not, some of these drugs, there are also health risks. So you want to know about that, because now as sports physicians, when you go, that is why we always advocate for athletes to go and see sports physicians, not just any other doctor. Not that we are actually dissing other doctors, we are undermining other doctors, but sports physicians are there for a reason. They are specialists in sports. That is why it is very important for all athletes to see sports physicians so that they avoid such things.
Gentlemen, Dr. Thulani Ngwenya, as well as Khalid Galant, the CEO of the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport. Thank you so much.